It works. All right. Can you guys hear me? Becca, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm going to do an audio check while you're there. I have this thing. It's called a snowball.
Uh-huh.
Supposed to like have good audio, and I'm going to see if it works. I'm going to try it right now. I'm just going to keep talking, and then
Right.
you know if I cut out and if you can't hear me at some point while I'm talking. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
So did my audio sound better with this thing?
It kind of sounds the same. I mean, yeah, it kind of sounds the same.
So I'm just gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did any of that sound different?
No.
Huh. Then what's the point? It's supposed to sound better.
Yeah, a couple of my friends, they get that for band so they can play their instrument through like the computer. And they said like for some of them it helps, but for most part it kind of stayed the same.
I wonder if I have to have it really close to my mouth like this, like hello, hello, hello.
Right.
Let me try that, and then you can tell me as I'm talking, you can tell me if it sounds any better now that I'm holding it close to me, and we'll see if it changes the sound of my voice at all, because it seems kind of silly if it doesn't. Any difference?
Nope.
Okay, well, no sense using this thing then, I guess. That's not worth anything. Huh. All right, pull that off the machine. Hi, Tiara.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm okay, yeah. I'm at my office right now, which I haven't been in here in so long I couldn't remember how to log into my computer because my laptop remembers my login, and so I didn't know what it was. And
Oh yeah.
I had to call the help desk to get back in. Silly. Well, this thing is worthless. It's bumming me out. It's so worthless. All right. Mhm. Not worth it, apparently. Kind of. Hi, Kira. Must be 1 o'clock. I hear the bells on campus ringing. An unusual sound. If you're not on campus, I suppose I haven't been on campus in forever. Huh. Let's see. Let's see. 1 o'clock. People are coming. Maybe I should send an email reminder. Let me send an email thing with the do an announcement here. Let's see. Yeah, oops. What? Insert an equation, insert that. Let's see if that's gonna work. 9. Let's see, join Zoom. I don't know why they have all these phone number things. I don't think, does anybody enter by phone and need to like use an interesting phone number to get into the class, or is everybody here on their computer?
I think when people just call in, like if they're not using the app at all, it shows up as like their phone number, right? Like when they have a weird username. So I think you'd know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, I can't get my computer here. Okay, there's the announcement. So hopefully people will see that. Should have sent it earlier. It's always like these things. You go from one meeting to the next and I forget to do things like that. All right, let's see here. Sorry, I'm shuffling around on my computer. I need a mouse. I have to use this piece of paper and I have to hold a piece of paper because the mouse doesn't want to work on the desk in the office. And I took the mouse at home. So I don't have a mouse. My mouse, I need a mouse. I don't have any extra, I mean, mouse pad is what I need, is a mouse pad. Don't have a mouse pad. I have a coaster, which I don't think is gonna work very well. But I guess I can use, let me see if this works better. Does this work better? Wow. There is a truck that shook the building just now, like an earthquake, which I'm hoping it's not an earthquake. Because I'm in Bret Hart House all by myself. If there's an earthquake, you guys are gonna get to watch it in real time. So we'll record. All right. Let's see, who else we got? We have Kimberly, Sawyer, Ruby, Becca, Chris, and Tiara. Chris, it looks like Isaac's there. You and Isaac. So we'll wait a few minutes before everybody gets on, but I do want to say that I just read this. There's this newsletter I subscribe to. It's called Corn Ferry. Is a guy who is a CEO of a consulting firm, and he was talking about how to get students more engaged in these Zoom classes. And one of the things he said is if you have a class that's small enough where everybody fits on the one screen, definitely tell everybody to please put their camera and their mics on. So I'm going to ask you to put your cameras and mics on, unless you have noisy kids or something, or you're okay. Isaac, I get it. You're crunching. That's all right. You can wait. You can wait till you're done eating. But the whole point is that there's a sort of a psychology between having to turn on the mic before you speak, and it is an inhibitor to student participation. So we're going to try it today and see if that works. So if you would unmute yourself, and that way you can talk at any time, and you don't have to worry about, being like, okay, hold on. I think those interruptions is what makes us feel less normal. When you have to kind of there's that beat between okay, hold on, let me unmute myself and then say something. And then we lose the momentum of the conversation. So Kimberly, Sawyer, Kira, I don't know if you have just heard that, and if you're on phones or if you are on your computer, and you can chime in with at least a video of yourself to try and help get the engagement level up a little bit. That might help. So that's the goal today. We're going to go over your assignments for this week. I'm going to also give you a preview for what's going on next week, and then how our project is going to be moving along, and what I'm expecting from you for the next 2 weeks for assignments. I kind of might have thrown, Kimberly said something in the chat. My connection isn't the best. Okay, yeah, I understand that too. That's okay if you can't get on and you're breaking up because the camera's on. Sawyer, your ceiling looks great, but I'd love to see your face if at all possible. If you can frame yourself a little better, that would be great. And and unmute yourself, you guys. Chris, Ruby, go ahead and unmute yourself, unless you're playing music really loudly and totally trying to ignore everything I say, which is okay too.
I keep getting really loud pings on my computer, and I'm trying to figure out how to turn my updates off, but I keep every 30 seconds I keep getting a really loud ping. So
I'm not hearing
it. What?
I'm not hearing it.
I know, I just unmuted myself.
Oh, I know, but I didn't
Oh.
hear the ping. You're getting pings like phone,
I
like
was muted
your
when the ping
phone
happened.
is going off.
Well, no, it's coming through the computer because it's a Mac and it's connected to my phone. So like my
Yeah, mine does that too. That's all right.
Okay.
We all, we get
Okay,
used
we'll
to
deal
it.
with it.
It's okay. It's natural this way. Great. So
I
you're
was just eating, so I don't know
that?
if you can hear that. I was just eating some lunch and I wasn't sure if you could hear, so I turned my volume off.
I can't hear. I can't. So that's good. And
Okay.
Sawyer, are you okay? Can you hear us?
Hi.
You want to unmute yourself and say hi?
Hmm?
Sawyer. I can't hear you when you talk. Did you just talk? Your audio is not working. Okay. Your audio doesn't work. That's all right. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through some of the assignments for the week and then also next week and sort of, talk about what's happening. We're in week 9 and you have 2 assignments this week. One is the quiz. Several of you have already done it already and have aced it, which is great. And that's basically a review up to this point of what you've learned in the class. Things like, what's a public service announcement? And, what is, I don't know, all the things that we've learned. So that's kind of going to gauge where you're at. And if you are seeing that you're not getting answers correct on that, then just think about like why, and what maybe you need to kind of review for the class. Cause I want to make sure you guys know how to talk the talk, right? You're taking video production and at some point somebody's gonna say, oh, you're taking video production. You're like, yeah. And you want to be able to, when they say, oh yeah, you do MOS. Oh yeah, can you do that? Like, the lingo, like you got it. You can just, you can rap about it with somebody who's a pro, which is great. The solutions project check-in is a paragraph or so explaining where you are at basically with your project. I want you to describe the interviews you've gotten. I want you to describe the B-roll you have gotten. And next Monday, you are going to have an assignment where we're going to watch the raw material from your shooting, whatever you've done, like any stuff that you shot B-roll or interviews. Now, interviews are easy to do because you could just record them, with people in the rule of thirds, sitting down, everything's sort of set, it's all calm. B-roll's harder to get, way harder, because you have to move around. And we're going to take a look at some student packages today. We're going to deconstruct them and give you some ideas about how to be a camera person shooting B-roll and what that looks like. And someone like Chris, who has covered Portland protests, he's been shooting still photography up there. He knows what it means to move around, to not stand still like you're a target waiting for a bullet to come at you. So moving around is important for camera people, still and moving photo. All right, so those 2 projects are due on Wednesday this week. That way I can give you some really good feedback. And then if you need to shoot some more, maybe for next week. You don't have to edit your stuff for next week. The stuff that I want to see next week is raw material. So you can upload a clip. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but I want to see some of your best stuff. So don't upload out of focus video. Don't upload interviews with no audio, because the first feedback you're going to get is you have no audio, so you shouldn't use that interview. Or your video's out of focus, so you shouldn't use that video. Give us something that you think you will use and that you want feedback on. So maybe somebody in the interview said something controversial and you're like, or maybe they dropped an F-bomb and you're like, oh, how does this sound? Do you think I should use this? Does it sound like gratuitous? Does it sound like it's really worthy in the story? That's the kind of thing we're going to talk about next week when we see your clips.
I have a question, Vicki.
Yeah.
How many clips do you want us to upload? Just one, like our strongest one, or
Yes.
5? Or okay.
No, I just want to see that you shot some B-roll, and I want to see that you shot an interview. So you're gonna have 2 different clips. Each is 10 points, and that one will be raw of an interview. One will be raw of some B-roll. And of course, you could have shot a million things, but we don't have time to see a million things of everybody's. So what I want to see is your best. Because if I see your best and I say, ooh, you know, we have concerns about the best, like the video is too dark or the video is too shaky or the video is too out of focus, then you know, wow, if that was my best, then I better start to shoot some more, which is fine. I mean, everybody reshoots, shoots, reshoots. Don't worry about it. You go out and you shoot a lot and you go out several times. So I'm just, so that you get feedback, basically.
And one other thing, I did this volunteer thing this weekend where we did a big trash cleanup just outside of my town. And then, so the person I want to focus on, he's like older, so he wasn't doing the physical labor part, but I did get interviews from some of the people that were doing the actual stuff. Could I use that? I'm not going to focus on them for my story, but I'm going to, like, it was all part of the same crew. So
Yeah, and eventually you do want to show him doing something. He's your main character. You want to show him doing something too, not just talking about it.
definitely.
So, you know, I can tell you that I won a national championship medal at a bike race in an interview. But you want to see as a viewer, I want to see as a viewer the bike race. I want to see, you know, that person
Yeah.
racing the bike race. I don't want to see them talking about it. I want to see it. So that's the same thing. And no matter how big or small the thing is, if somebody says, yeah, I've planted 1,000 trees over 30 years, you know, to help the forests, I want to see them at least planting a tree.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I'm glad they're talking about it, but I don't want to just see the tree. I want to see them planting the tree, or I want to see them, you know, checking out the tree or watering the tree or measuring the tree or doing something with the tree or the trees, plural, right? I want to see it. Sort of like, it's sort of like evidence, right? If somebody says they did some great things, you want to, and that's the thing with solution stories that we're going to talk about today too, is, you know, what does that mean? All right, so let's go to the section on the project, which is project 4.
Sorry, could I ask a quick question?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see. This is why you have your mic off. It's awesome.
Sorry, there's a whistle going off in the back. I'll check. One
It's
second.
okay,
Sorry.
too. We're used to it.
I'm sorry. So I was just wondering how long should each of the clips be for the stuff that we're going to be submitting to view in class?
I just want to, well, when you're shooting, shoot hours and hours and hours. And then just give me about a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
That's it. Sorry.
Like a good sampling that we get the point, right? I mean, people are going to talk we don't want to watch a 10-minute interview, you know, it's like the class isn't interested in that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the solution story project for fall basically is your biggest project of the semester. Okay. It might be the final one. I say the final one because it was supposed to be the final one. We skipped project 2 and we may get back to project 2 if we have time, but who knows? You know, I should probably record this maybe. I don't know, because whatever. Where is the record button on here? I didn't have a record button. Huh. Where's the record button? Oh yeah. Stop recording, pause recording. Maybe it is recording already. Okay. Anyway, okay. So that is yeah. So we'll see. We still don't know if we're getting to 2. We're still working on 4, the last project. All right. So many of the stories we see on the environment or social justice today are about the problems of climate change or criminal justice issues, and we're going to change the narrative and produce thoughtful stories about people who are doing the right thing to help the planet and society. So basically, we're looking for the helpers. This notion is called solutions journalism, which focuses on solutions rather than the problems in order to present the story in a less fearful manner. The point is to highlight the solutions. So we'll be working on the final project for the rest of the semester. And then there's some really great examples of solution stories on the Solutions Journalism Network. And I highly recommend that you watch some of those. We'll take a look at one later. What I did here was I highlighted photos of stories that students have done at other universities on solutions journalism, because the Solutions Journalism Network networks in universities and students from other universities doing these same kind of projects. So I collected some of their ideas just so you get an idea that this can go like, it can be very simple. Excuse me, I got dry throat. So this first example here, you see a photo of a Famiensis sighting. You see this cute little dog in this door window. And that story was about how this humane society is designed to improve adoption outcomes by changing things at the shelter and making it less stressful for the dogs. So instead of using like cages and wires and like these harsh things, they're making it more friendly for the dog and more pleasant experience. So that was a solution story. The second one is a solution story about what student groups are doing on one of these campuses. This is not from Humboldt State, this is a different campus, but this is a mentoring group. And they have, they meet with students, and then they have a space where students can meet. And this is a solution to helping students, be accepted, build community with people in their campuses. And so they have the African American Student Union, and that was part of this story here. And then the third one on the bottom is a solution story about conservation efforts, obviously planting trees, which is, the first thing that usually comes to mind with us. And this was planting trees on private property to restore a prairie ecosystem. And they were doing this at a native conservation area. So these three different types of stories were solution stories, and they're very close to home for the students. When you're doing your solution story, I hope it's something that is relevant to you and that you're feeling like it's worthwhile working on, not something that is way out there and distant, because I feel like it's okay to have something that is about the campus or about your area or whatever. So I want you to feel good about your solutions. Now, a solution story has some specific sort of requirements in order for it to be a solution story. It is not just doing stories about heroes or making people seem like they're heroes. It's actually showing and proving that it's working. What these people are doing is working. So the Solutions Journalism Network has a framework for telling stories like that we call solution stories. And they're saying that the focus is on the responses to problems in society, than merely telling about the problem. Obviously, you have to explain the problem in your story. Otherwise, people are like, well, what's the problem? So that has to be explained, but you're not harping on that. You're focused on the solutions, on someone doing the thing to fix it. So a solution story explains a problem or an issue, but it shows how people are responding to that problem or issue, and exactly, very specifically what they're doing, like changing the doors and the kennel, or planting trees on a conservation site, or having a center for African American students, right? So those are solutions to situations that they will explain what the problem is. It includes whether that response is effective, and this is the key part for a solution story. Is finding out whether or not it's effective, because someone can say, I'm planting trees, but someone else could say, well, you're planting trees in a swamp, and that's not a good spot to plant the trees. Now you're killing all the frogs that need the swamp because you're planting the trees. So in a solution story, the solution is supposed to be something that works. And so you're going to be looking for someone else to support that and say, yes, it's working, or no, it's working, or we're not really sure it's working. So that's an important part of the story. And that's not your main character, but that's somebody who you're going to get for your story eventually. So if your story is about, like Becca's doing something on the sand dunes, if she's doing a story on people who are trying to rebuild the sand dunes, great. But she's also got to find somebody outside of that group, somebody who can give like a more critical look from the outside of it to say what they're doing is working or not. Like, where's the proof of that? Does it show that there's like more river otters return to an area, or sea otters, or whatever that is? Like, you're looking for solutions and also the proving ground of that. And that's the harder part to get, but that's what makes it a true solution story. And then that story relates to a broader context of whether that thing would work elsewhere in the world. And that's sometimes a question that you'll also ask. So in this section on that project here, this is a really important part of it, the framework. And I want you to revisit that when you're doing your stories and when you're doing your interviews and you're saying, what kind of questions should I be asking? This is the stuff that you're going to be looking at here to make you think of the questions. Like, well, is it working? Is what you're doing working? And if so, explain how and show me how. Okay. So those are some of the questions you want to ask when you're doing your interviews. Comments or questions about that stuff there? Okay. Then also in that section under your solution story, the steps for producing your solution story. So we're going to go over the pre-production, production, and then I'll just briefly talk about post-production, but we're not in post-production. Pre-production is the stage we're kind of in right now. We're in pre and post. I mean, pre and production, excuse me. Pre-production is planning, it's preparing, it's setting up the interviews. That's all pre-production. Production is actually going out and shooting and actually doing the interviews, doing the B-roll shooting. You will be asked this question on a quiz later this semester. What's the difference between pre-production, production, and post-production? Post-production is editing. So production, if you think of production, is the part where you're shooting. Everything that comes before it, planning, budgeting, whatever, organizing, pre-production. Production is shooting, and then post is your editing, okay? So in pre-production, you found a story idea already. It was about somebody interesting, somebody doing the right thing about protecting social justice or the environment. You have now found that person. You also research that person, and you may still need to do some research on that person. You might not have enough of information, but you're looking for basic facts about the topic of your story. For example, if you're doing a story on Humboldt County fishing, and there's a scientist whose research has been successful at getting a ban passed to protect the fish, you'd want to find out things like, what are the exact months for salmon fishing season? And what's the cost of a fishing license? And where can people go fishing if they can't go fishing in Humboldt County? So those are the things that you're going to be looking at for your pre-production, and those are the questions you're going to want to research. Those might be things you find on the internet. And then those are things you're going to ask your subject, because you always want to ask people to confirm what you find on the internet. Don't always believe what you find on the internet. That's why you're asking experts questions. That's why you're doing the interviews, to get that verification of what you find. Now, in production, you're going to interview your main character, who's the person doing the good work. And that person might be part of a team, or that person might be part of a larger group. That's fine. And you might interview other people in that group or that team. Great. But your focus is on that central person, because you really want to show how that person connects all those pieces, right? You're going to interview at least 3 other people with diverse perspectives for your story. So those might be experts outside of that same organization. I don't want to interview 3 people from the Department of Wildlife if I'm doing a story that my main character is from the Department of Wildlife, because that's not going to give me diverse perspectives. I want to find perspectives outside of that. So maybe I would interview a professor of wildlife outside of the government agency, or maybe I would interview people who are, fishermen or farmers or whatever. So you want to interview different people.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What if your story just focuses on one person? How are you supposed to get outside perspective?
That's what you do. That person knows people, or somebody else is watching them, right? So if somebody's cleaning beaches, or if someone is doing something, there's other people who are impacted, the people who use the beach, the people who watch that person doing their work.
Okay, I get what you're saying. And can it be like, what if the people don't know that person exists? Like, what if I like in my,
why don't you tell me? Let's talk specifics, Isaac, because why not?
Okay, in my video, I am videotaping a guy that I see sometimes when I go surfing who just picks up trash on the side of the road. And he's like a cool little character that just does this to do this. But if I can set up my interviews as like a what if I ask people like, hey, what if I told you that there is a man with a beard who walks around picking up trash? Would you believe me? And have them kind of answer this question as if they're like responding to like some local folklore or something.
Well, unless the guy is living on Mars, someone else knows he's doing that. I mean, you saw him.
Yeah, but I see him and I notice him because I go there frequently. Like I'm there frequently, but if you're like a family or a passerby on the weekend who just shows up, you would never know this guy was even there who's picking up the beach or picking up the roadways. You
Well,
just,
that becomes challenging, but you still can do it. Somebody else is seeing him doing it. I mean, so you talk to someone who see him, but you don't always have to talk about people who know he exists. You can still talk to people who are organizations that do organized cleanups and ask them about, what they're doing. And, if they're doing more than he is, maybe he's doing more than they are. I mean, you know what I mean? You're going to interview other people for sure. Absolutely. People who
okay,
see him,
guys,
people know, people
I
don't.
kind of see a direction I can go. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
But good question. Because good. All right. So yeah, and in the example we used about the salmon story, let's say you interview a fisherman and then you might interview people who buy the salmon. You might interview someone at the licensing office. Obviously, you're going to interview the scientist who did the study to get the ban passed. You might interview a politician who was in charge of getting this ban passed in legislation. So there's always people impacted by what someone does. And that's where the solution story really comes in, is showing that it's working. So maybe, you're talking to people outside of their world, but their impact is going to be commented upon. And then the B-roll part of it in production, you're going to, during an interview, you're paying attention to what people are saying. If someone says, yeah, I planted 1,000 trees in the forest, you're like, hey, what day can we go up to the forest and you point out these trees you planted? And maybe you can give me some photos of when you planted them, when you took the photos. I can use those in there as well. Maybe we can look at a historical thing and then something now. So, you want to see what people are telling you about, and the viewer wants to see it. I can sit here and I can listen to someone telling me all these wonderful things about someone. I want to see it. I want to see the visual of it. So that's what the B-roll part is about. Now, remember, you're going to be shooting those compelling close-ups and getting as close as you can using the zoom, keeping as much space as you can safely with people wearing your mask. Most of the stuff hopefully is outside. If you're going inside, then you need to make sure they're wearing a mask and you're wearing a mask and that everybody's being social distanced. But outdoors, it's a lot safer. And if you're shooting B-roll outside, it makes it a lot easier. Yeah, Tiara?
I had a question real quick.
Mhm.
So if one of the people I wanted to interview was like under the age of 18, is there any extra stuff that you have to do for that, or is it okay?
No, we're not selling this, so it's fine.
Okay. All right,
If we were going to be doing this content for selling for commercial purposes, yes.
okay,
but no.
thank you.
When someone you interview talks to you on camera, the immediate assumption is they agreed to the interview. Otherwise, they would walk away, say, I don't want to talk. So you automatically get their consent. In journalism, in research studies that people are doing, like when they have somebody doing something and they're like, oh, we want to find out about your medical history and whatever. Yeah, those things you have to have all kinds of legal releases, but not for news stories and not for stories like this, for journalism.
I have a quick question for you, Vicky.
Yeah.
So I was hoping to maybe interview like Estelle Fennell, possibly. Do you have any tips on how to interface with like a political figure like that? Or if there's any way that I can get her to prioritize my little HSU story instead of all the other millions of things she has to do?
I think the politicians are always impressed when a student even knows them and their name. I would just contact her directly, go through her website, contact her directly and say, hey, I'm doing a story. I'd really like to do an interview with you. Maybe she's up for an in-person one or on Zoom, whatever. Just say, here's my deadline. Always when you're setting up stuff with politicians, though, always give them a deadline that's kind of before your real deadline, because, they're like, yeah, I'll do it in November. And then something happens and you don't see anything. But you can tell her it's not an election piece or whatever if you want, just to tell her what it's about a little bit. Now, sometimes people say, well, give me the questions ahead of time. And in journalism, we don't do that, because then you lose the, you just tell them what it's about. People just say, oh, I don't really know what the questions are now, but I know what here's the topic. Here's basically what I'm going to ask you. If you're going to ask somebody for specifics, like if you're going to ask somebody to provide data and talk about data, then you want to tell them ahead of time what your questions are. If you're just asking somebody about, basic stuff that they don't have to prepare for, then that's fine. You don't really give them questions. But if you're really going to ask very specific stuff and you want somebody to know numbers and, like, well, how many people are sick with coronavirus? Obviously, you don't want to, put someone on the spot and not have them prepare. So use your judgment on that. But some people will ask, especially politicians, because they always want to make sure they say the politically correct thing so they don't bum out their constituents. But honestly, it should be more fluid and transparent and honest and genuine. Otherwise, rehearsed answers sound terrible, and I bet you won't use them anyway, because when somebody's reading and preparing and memorizing their answers, it sounds terrible on camera.
Okay.
You can,
Cool,
you
thank
can
you.
read through it. There's nothing honest sounding about it. Yeah, Tiara.
Sorry, I did, like, going off of that. So if you ended up having an issue with your interview and like one of your options was to redo that interview, my fear about that is that it would be like kind of what you just said, that since they did it before, it would seem rehearsed. But what if you literally had to scrap your whole interview because something went wrong?
It's happened. It's happened before where I've done a whole interview and the audio, the mic didn't work and I had to go back. Actually, I will tell you what, the second time is great because now they've already it's not that they rehearsed it, but they thought about it. And just like I've said before, when you ask somebody to talk about their childhood or something that happened in the past, even last week, you have to and you think about it. And then after the interview's over, and I'm usually walking out the door is when they go, oh, wait, I just remembered something great I wanted to tell you. And you're like, oh man, I got to set up the camera again, because I didn't give them enough time. I was rushed and I didn't give them time to think about it. So that's why it's always good to just chill, talk about the weather, talk about anything, just give them some warm up and definitely give them an idea of what you want to talk about before you actually go to the office or go to outside with them and meet and talk, because you don't want them to be totally stumped and you want them to give you good answers. Like if somebody said to me, what was I doing when I was 5 years old? It would take me days to think of, I can't just come up with that in an interview right now. So, if that's what I wanted them to talk about, we like, hey, I'm going to interview you about your childhood. So think about your best memories. That's what it's going to be about. I don't have to tell them exactly the question, but I give them at least a heads up on what I'm talking about so they're prepared and they don't go wow, I wish you had told me before. So that's always good interviewing. You give them a little bit of an idea, but not enough that they're practicing a rehearsed answer so that it sounds very stiff. And then when it sounds stiff, you don't want to have it in your story because sounds like a robot. And when somebody does that, it's annoying. You don't want to. That's bleh. Okay. Let's go back to sharing. All right. So that's the production part of it. Then you have the post-production, which is going to be where you listen to all your material and you're going to pick out your best stuff. You're not going to use every single thing you shot, but you want to shoot a lot because you don't know what you're going to need later. And then you're going to write a script. You're going to edit your script. You're going to shoot a stand-up for your story. Next week, we're going to go over stand-ups. You're going to see some today in the examples I show you. And then you're going to appear in your story. So something for you to think about now that's coming up too. And then you're going to edit your package and submit it. Let's go to, what's the next document on this thing? I don't even know. I just hit next.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
How long does it need to be overall?
Your whole story?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good question. I would say if your story's 2.5 minutes, you've shot about 30 hours of B-roll. So, the longer the story, the more B-roll you have. If you estimate now, this is editing, okay? Let's say you have hours and hours of video, and for each shot you did, you use about 3 seconds of it. In a 2.5 minute story, how much B-roll would it be if you had 3 seconds? So it's 2.5 minutes is how many, get the calculator. All right, because I'm terrible at math. So 2.5 minutes is how many seconds? 60 seconds, that's 120. It's let's say it's 180 seconds, okay? So 180 seconds 180 seconds, and you're going to use in 3-second shots, you need 60 different shots. 60 different shots is a lot. So probably about 2 minutes. That's a lot of B-roll. Yeah. So let me show you a story a student did on a dairy farm. This is an old story. It's going to look a little like grainy because it was before high definition, and it was like 100 years ago when I first started working here. But I always love this story because it's got great natural sound. And I always like to talk about this because it's got the best natural sound. And I wasn't finished talking, but it started playing. So right at the beginning of the story is this amazing moo from a cow. Okay.
Domingo Santos gets up every morning.
All right, I'm gonna stop it right there. We're 6 seconds
Aw.
in, and we've had how many shots? Yeah,
Two.
had quite a few shots already, right? So this is what I mean by you have to shoot a lot of shots. Picture yourself as the camera person in this 6 seconds. 6 seconds here in the beginning of the story. Watch. There's one shot. There's another one, right? So they're in two different places, but you know they're still in the mud. But they moved.
Domingo Santos
And then there's another guy.
gets up every morning before dawn to go to work. He's run his Arcata Dairy farm for more than 50 years. He says the climate in Humboldt County is perfect for raising cows.
We got the pasture base, which is very valuable. You know, like see our cows get out to pasture, they eat and they lay down, enjoy the sun, the weather.
Wendy Acres Dairy has been in the Santos family for nearly 100 years. Santos says times have changed, and now he relies heavily on automated machinery to complete the daily milking of his cows. But even with machines, it's not easy.
You gotta have some experience. You gotta understand cows, know cows. You gotta start someplace.
Jim Bregman drives his shiny long milk truck every afternoon to Wendy Acres Dairy. It takes only 30 minutes to pump about 2,000 gallons of milk from a giant holding tank inside the milking facility to his truck.
It pumps about 150 gallons a minute. So that's about 2.5 gallons a second.
After he loads up, Bregman delivers the milk to Crescent City, where it is made into Rumiano cheese, and not one drop stays behind.
I haven't drank raw milk in a long time. So it's just something you have to get used to.
I had to see for myself. It's not bad. It's warm. It's fresh out of the udder. At the end of his typical workday around 6 p.m., Santos goes home to his wife, Mary. He says she wants him to retire.
Of course, there's gonna come to a day I'll have to. When I get disabled, I guess. Or she hits me with a head with a bottle.
Although the cows are mostly numbered, there are a few with names. The bulls, like Charlie, for example. He had no comment. On this dairy, there are about 350 milking cows, and only 4 bulls to share all the lovely ladies. For the Humboldt Report, I'm Ashley Bailey.
All right. Let's, I'm gonna like make that disappear for a minute. What do you remember from that story?
Cows.
She drank the milk.
She drank the milk.
Nasty.
Yes, that's the stand-up. She had 2 stand-ups. It's compelling. Why is that compelling? Why is that memorable?
Cause it's gross.
Because she did it. Because she got in there and she did it, and she showed you, the viewer, you're not here. I'm going to do this for you. I'm here. And it gives the story credibility because she was in the story. She showed herself there. It wasn't shot by someone else. It wasn't shot in another state and that she's just tracking and narrating her voice somewhere. She did the story. It adds so much validity to it that she did that she took that risk. So I've seen students do stories where they're jumping out of planes with someone because they're doing a skydiving story, and it's like, well, if you're going to do a skydiving story, get the GoPro, and and they've done it. It adds validity when you appear in the story, so that's going to be part of your stand-up. That's one of the most memorable pieces for you. What else do you remember? Anybody? Chime in.
His laugh.
His laugh, good. You wouldn't have thought that you might have done that in an interview. Somebody laughed, and that was used in the story. That's the most natural thing. It's not rehearsed, it's not staged, it's not practiced. And it was used because it really makes us, the viewer, understand who this person is a human. So there you go. Sometimes people are going to do things like, and that's all, that's your soundbite. That might be the whole soundbite you use. You might talk to them for 2 hours and you get, and what else, right? So that's fine. That's absolutely fine. When you edit, that's when you're making these editorial decisions on what to put in the story. So that's good. What else? I know there's cows. Anything specific about a cow?
Something milked.
That there was only 3 bulls for all the quote unquote lovely ladies.
Yeah, she did make an error there. That wasn't a bull, but it was a nice try. Yeah, she didn't know much about cows, but that was kind of funny. And nobody else really notices, but it's like kind of funny. It's like, that's not a bull. All right. Yeah, the close-ups of the udders of the hands squeezing the milk out. The close-up when that thing dropped with the milk coming out, with the guy who does the milk. Close-ups, right? We could feel that milk. We could feel the squirt, squirt, squirt. We could almost feel the udder and what it would be like to pull that udder down hard. Getting in there, close-up, getting that, like zooming in, obviously, but being there is so different. It's really hard to do a story on Zoom. It's really hard to show your audience a Zoom thing, but you could still do it. You could have somebody, you know, doing what they do and do it on Zoom. It's just a challenge. You're gonna have to figure out, how do you tell them to get closer to the camera? You know, bring it up here and do it here, or you have to figure it out. You have to direct it. You have to tell them what to do if that's what you're gonna, if that's how you're gonna do it. But that was a very visual story, and the shots are very varied. So she had, this is Ashley, who actually works at National Public Radio right now. She's been very successful. She's graduated from our program. She's doing very well. But you have all these close-up shots. Beautiful rule of thirds, by the way, with all the look space that, you know, see, here's the look space. He's facing this way. We see both eyes, and he's, you know, that's great. Look at this shot, beautiful shot. We see the thing, we hear the natural sound of that. And she wasn't talking when she was doing this, so her voice didn't ruin those natural sound parts. So she had to be very quiet and, again, allow for the recording of those audio pieces, the noise of, she doesn't know what's going to happen. She didn't know that metal thing was going to hit and go clink. But boy, what beautiful natural sound. And the moo and the mud, just the cows walking in the mud. That squirrel. That's the kind of stuff you dream about in a good visual story. Visual storytelling is about capturing those moments that are natural, things that were not rehearsed, not interviews standing, but all that other really cool stuff. So this is the kind of thing you want to get. You want to have, like, this is a nice wide shot, right? And then you've got some medium shots here. It shows him measuring whatever, you know, he didn't rehearse this. He was just going along and she's just quickly moving around. You got to move when you're the camera person. You just can't be sitting there with your camera. You got to be like, okay, he's over here, and then I got to get over here and shoot this cow, and I got to go over there. You know, you're moving, you're running around, you're going low, high, around, down, because people are going to do their job. They're going to work. They're going to do what they're doing, and you need to move around and get the framed shot you want. Look at how beautiful of a shot this is. Right here, we see the guy looking at something. We see him and we see what he's looking at. And it's a great framed shot of her just shooting B-roll. And then here he sticks his head in this container. I mean, and then you get a wide shot of the truck driving away. So they're just for the milk guy. Look at all the different shots just for the milk guy. The truck when it arrived and backed in, then the guy inside the place with the container, inside the container shot, right? Him doing this stuff that he does for, you know, loading up the milk or putting the milk in, the interview, and then him going back into the truck and checking the truck, and then driving away. So there was a lot of movement. She wasn't just standing in one spot. She had to move around and get all that and then run outside as he's driving away and getting all that stuff. So when we talk about it, and if you time the shots here, if I just mute this and we time the shots, you can look 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. So those shots were 1 to 2 seconds long. In like one case, it was a 3-second shot. So what I said before about 3 seconds, having to get 60 shots for a 2-minute piece, she got a lot of different shots, a lot of different B-roll. And that's the challenging part of any story, is getting the B-roll, because people want to see stuff being done. They don't want to just be told about it. We're a visual storytelling mechanism in video. So you have an opportunity to show people doing something, not just talking about it. The talking about it is cake. That's the easiest part. It's getting the video. It's getting all those shots and getting them in focus and in good lighting when everything's moving and you're trying to move around. And depending upon your story and where you're at and what you're doing, you don't necessarily want to use a tripod because you got to move fast and you got to hold that camera steady and frame your shot. Don't do camera moves. Just hold your shots. Hold your shots, record your shots, reframe and record your shots. If you're doing all this moving stuff, it's amateur, right? This is all amateur. This is what people do when they go on vacation. You see this. You see this. It's like, oh, look, they're holding the camera the wrong way, the phone the wrong way, and they're doing this. And then they post it on Instagram and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sick. Stop. Don't move the camera. Don't move your shots. Just hold your frame and record. Let the people move. Let the stuff move. Okay? You move a camera when you shoot a building. When you shoot something that doesn't move, when it's so boring and you're shooting a building exterior and you're going, wow, this is really boring. So you shoot one shot steady, and then maybe you do like a pan or something really smooth or something. But you don't want to do too many camera shots. When people are moving, you stay still. When stuff is moving, you stay still. Animals, stay still. Frame your shots, let them walk out of the shot. Let them walk in the shot. Let them drive out of the shot. Let them drive into the shot. Let them walk in this way. Do whatever you want. Just hold your frame. If you're shooting a building that's not moving and it's really steady and it's going to be very, very boring, I always shoot a steady shot for everything anyway. And then if I want to do a camera move, I'll do a camera move just because I have a steady shot to back up. If my camera move stinks and it's bumpy and I didn't see it was bumpy, but you know, nothing's worse than a move and it goes like that, you know, you're like, whoa, earthquake. So these are the challenges you have in shooting some B-roll for your story. And that's the most interesting part of your story, is going to be the B-roll. The interviews support what we see, but the B-roll is what tells us the story. A picture tells 1,000 words. Video tells thousands more. Questions, comments, concerns about your subject? Anyone have any challenges that they need, like a GoPro or something else to shoot with because they want to shoot underwater, or they're going to go into a very wet area and shoot? Don't drop the camera in the river, but go in the river. Get in there. You know, if you're going in, if somebody's going in waders, you know, standing on the bank might not cut it. You might have to get some waders and get out there with them. You know, obviously 6 feet, but get out there. Think about where you want to place your camera for your shots. Where do you want to be? You don't always want to be standing. If I am always shooting everything from this position, it's going to be so boring. My favorite thing is getting on the ground. I get low, I get on the ground, I sit on the ground, I kneel on the ground. I've got photos of me taking video at events, and you will never see me standing. I am never just standing like this, because that perspective to me is boring and it doesn't show things well. If someone is doing something like, and they're looking down, a lot of people do things like looking down. They do this, they're working on their computer, or maybe they're sewing, or maybe they're welding, or maybe they're doing this. Where do I want to be as the camera person if someone is looking down like this and doing something? Do I want to be over here? Maybe. Do I want to be here? Maybe. But down below will get their eyes. So if I'm below them, shooting up towards them, right? Let's say, I don't know, let's say I'm here, I got a candle. Let's say I'm making a candle and I'm trying to get a wick on a candle, right? Now you can shoot me this way, but imagine if you shoot me this way, right? Now you see the candle and you see my eyes going, right? And I'm working on, so now that would have to come from below. You'd have to be on the ground, or you'd have to have your camera, you know, like you'd have to figure out different perspectives. So again, it's hard maintaining 6 feet and being low. You just have to zoom in and frame your shot. You may have to use the zoom more than being close, but outside you're way safer, obviously. But it's always a fun challenge to get the B-roll. I always love to see what people get for B-roll to cover their stories. What's the most interesting thing, most visual thing you can think about? So when we talk about a visual story, you know, you might be getting somebody who is cleaning the sand dunes. Well, let's see him cleaning the sand dunes, but what kind of close-ups can you get? What kind of shots can be really compelling with that? Think about it before you go out there. Think about what you might see and where you might be as the camera person recording. What you're going to be, you know, what it's going to look like. Almost like storyboarding it in your head. We don't storyboard stories like this. It's just too long. In film, they do often, but not in journalism. Journalism, you don't usually. But I usually try to at least picture in my head, what do I think I'm going to get? If I was going out to that farm, yeah, udders, cows' feet squishing in the mud, you know, all kinds of really cool shots. But you think about those and then you remember to get them too, which is kind of neat. And then when you get there, there's tons and tons of stuff to do with cows. You get lots of, but that's kind of cool. The one came up and went, This is being recorded. I might regret doing that. All right. I'm going to stop recording. Actually, I'm going to pause it.